betrayed by their children during Christmas. He drove them deep into the forest, unloaded a thin tent, smiled, and left. By nightfall, snow buried the ground, and the truth waited inside a food basket. A note, no return, no mercy. Days later, one of them lay dying beside a frozen road. What happened after a stranger stopped would change their fate forever. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. Just sign it. I'll handle the rest. That was what the eldest son said, loud enough for the realtor to hear, soft enough to sound like care. The old couple stood in their own living room, coats still on, hands clasped like they were in church. The man's thumb rubbed the edge of a worn folder. The woman's fingers trembled as she tried to keep the pen from shaking. People in their neighborhood had always called them saints, not because they preached, but because they did the hard stuff without applause. Years earlier, they had opened their door to children nobody wanted. One came with night terrors. One came with a scar that no one explained. Another barely spoke for months. They raised them anyway. Extra shifts, second jobs, quiet sacrifices that never made the family group chat. Now, the same kids acted like that history was a cute story, not a debt. The couple had planned a simple retirement garden, church, small trips, warm meals at the same table. But lately, calls from their adopted children had turned strange, short, forced, like somebody was keeping score. A neighbor, Mrs. Della, had leaned in by the mailbox and whispered, "I heard your boy's having money problems. Watch your papers, okay?" They tried to laugh it off. Pride did that, denial too. Then the eldest son arrived with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He walked the rooms like he was already measuring for new furniture. He said the house was too much for them. He said they were getting confused. He said a good son did not let his parents live alone. He offered a plan that sounded responsible, even loving. Sell the home, move in with him. Let him manage everything. He would keep them safe. They wanted to believe him. They needed to believe him, so they signed. The home they had paid for with their backs and knees became paperwork on a clipboard. The sale went through fast, too fast. The check did not land in their hands. It went to him straight into his account because he said it was easier that way. That night, the couple sat on a borrowed couch in his house, listening to him talk on the phone behind a closed door. His voice cut through the hallway. "She's not sleeping well. He's slower than I thought. This is going to be a problem." In the kitchen, a daughter passed them a plate without looking up. No hug. No, you made it. Just a glance at the suitcase by the door. Like luggage was all they were now. Outside, a car door slammed and someone laughed. The kind of laugh that did not include them. The woman's eyes widened. The man swallowed hard. And then just before Christmas, the son announced a family tradition. He said they would love a short camping trip. The son framed it like nostalgia. He said fresh air would do him good. Said Christmas felt better when you stepped away from noise. He packed the car himself, moving fast, avoiding questions. The woman noticed there were no heavy coats. The man noticed the gas gauge was full, like he did not plan to turn back soon. They drove for hours. Roads thinned, houses vanished. Cell signal dropped without warning. The forest closed in, dark and tight, branches bending under early snow. The son hummed along to the radio, tapping the wheel, relaxed in a way that felt wrong. When he finally stopped, there was no campground, no lights, no other cars, just trees and silence. He unloaded a thin tent that looked like it belonged at a summer festival. A small food basket followed, a loaf of bread, 2 cans, a bottle of water. He set it down carefully like he was completing a task. The man asked where the cabins were. The son smiled and said they would be back before nightfall. The woman asked about the cold. He said the weather report looked fine. He hugged them quickly, too quickly. The hug felt empty, arms stiff, eyes already drifting toward the driver's seat. Then he drove off, tires crunching over ice, taillights fading between trees. They waited. At first they talked quietly, telling themselves this was part of the plan. The man checked his watch. The woman rubbed her hands together, breath fogging the air. An hour passed, then another. Snow began to fall. Light at first, then steady. Inside the basket, beneath the bread, the woman found the note. It was written neatly like a grocery list, no anger, no hesitation. He said he could not do this anymore. Said they were draining his life. Said he deserved peace. He told them not to look for him. He said survival was now their responsibility. The woman sat down and hard. The man read the note twice, then folded it slowly like that might soften it. Around them, the forest absorbed the sound of everything they had lost. Night came fast. Wind slid through the trees and straight into the tent. The fabric snapped and shivered. Snow crept under the edges. The woman whispered prayers. The man kept watch, listening for footsteps that never came. By morning, the bread was stiff with cold. Their fingers burned, then went numb. The man stepped outside and scanned the trees, searching for tracks, for proof this was a mistake. There was nothing, just white ground and silence. When the woman started coughing sharp and deep, he knew this was no trip. This was abandonment, and the storm was only beginning. The snow did not pause. It thickened, pressed down by a sky that felt low and heavy. The tent bent under the weight, fabric snapping with every gust. The man kept tightening the stakes, even when his fingers stopped listening to him. Each time he came back inside, the woman looked smaller. They ate little, not because they planned it, but because fear stole appetite first. The woman's cough deepened, turning wet, dragging through her chest. She tried to sit upright, then failed. Her head lolled forward. The man wrapped his coat around her shoulders, then his sweater, then pressed his own body close to keep what warmth remained. At night the cold changed shape. It crept, it slipped into bones. It whispered that sleep was rest, that rest was relief. The man forced himself awake by counting breaths, by moving his toes, by whispering her name again and again. Sometimes she answered, sometimes she did not. By the third day the water bottle froze solid. He cracked it open with a rock, licking ice like it was sugar. When the woman tried to stand, her legs folded, her eyes lost focus. Fever took over, wild and unforgiving. That was when he made a decision he never thought he would face. He packed what little they had left. He lifted her onto his back, her arms hanging loose, breath shallow against his neck. He stepped into the storm with no map, no direction, only a stubborn refusal to die quietly. He slipped, fell, rose, dragged himself forward. When his knees gave out, he crawled. When his hands bled, he wrapped them in torn fabric and kept moving. Time stretched and twisted. Minutes felt like hours. Hours collapsed into nothing. Once he thought he heard a voice. Another time he saw headlights that vanished when he blinked. The forest played tricks, cruel ones. He spoke aloud just to stay real. He told her stories from their early years, about the first child they adopted, about the night they stayed up laughing over burnt rice because it was all they had. The woman stirred once, barely. Her fingers twitched against his collar. That small movement carried him farther than food ever could. On what he later learned was Christmas Eve, the wind eased. Not kindness, just a pause. Snow thinned enough to reveal a dark strip beneath the white. A road, he collapsed beside it, turning his body so the woman lay shielded from the wind. He waved an arm that felt heavier than stone. No cars passed at first, then another stretch of silence. He closed his eyes for 1 second too long. The sound of tires slowed somewhere near. A door opened. Footsteps crunched closer. A stranger's voice cut through the cold, sharp with shock. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" The man tried to answer. Nothing came out. And then everything went dark. The man woke to warmth that felt unreal. At first he thought it was death, the kind people whispered about, soft and forgiving. Then he smelled soup. Heard a child's voice somewhere down the hall. Felt a blanket tucked tight around his shoulders. He tried to sit up. A firm hand stopped him. "Easy, you're safe." The voice belonged to the stranger from the road. Mid-30s, tired eyes. The kind of man who looked like life had been pressing on him for a while. Later they would learn his name. For now he was just the reason they were still breathing. The woman lay on a couch nearby, hooked to oxygen, cheeks flushed with fever, but alive. A paramedic knelt beside her, adjusting a line, speaking calmly into a radio. Outside, snow tapped against the windows like it was curious. The stranger paced while professionals worked. He kept running a hand through his hair, glancing between the couple and his small daughter, who watched quietly from the doorway, clutching a stuffed bear. Neighbors had already started texting him. Someone saw the ambulance. Someone always saw something. "Who are they?" a voice had asked earlier. "No idea," he had answered. But they almost froze to death. The woman spent days in the hospital. Pneumonia, severe exposure. Doctors shook their heads, saying survival was unlikely, then adjusted their tone when she opened her eyes again. The man slept in a chair, refusing to leave, nodding off mid-sentence, waking with a start every time a nurse passed. The stranger visited every day, brought soup, brought books, brought his daughter, who waved chilly, and whispered hello, like she was afraid to break something fragile. When the woman was finally released, he insisted they come home with him. "Just for a while," he said. "No pressure, no forms." The man hesitated, pride flaring, then fading. Pride had nearly killed them. At the kitchen table, hands wrapped around hot mugs, the stranger finally asked the question that had been sitting between them like a loaded weapon. "How did this happen?" The man looked at his wife. She nodded once. So they told him about the adoption, the sacrifices, the house, the note, the forest, the walk toward nothing. The stranger listened without interrupting, jaw tight, foot tapping harder with every detail. At one point he laughed, short and sharp, not from humor, but disbelief. "That's not just cruel," he said quietly. "That's planned." That night, after everyone slept, he sat at his desk. Rejection letters littered the floor. A half-finished manuscript glowed on the screen. He deleted it without rereading. He opened a new file. He typed until his fingers cramped. Until dawn leaked through the blinds, until the story stopped being theirs alone. And for the first time in months, he did not feel like quitting. The story went live without ceremony. No marketing plan, no publisher. Just a title, a voice, and a truth that refused to stay quiet. The betrayal before Christmas spread first in whispers, then in waves. Comments filled with anger, tears, recognition. People said it sounded unreal, then admitted it felt familiar. The writer watched the numbers climb in disbelief. Downloads, shares, messages from strangers who said they had survived something similar and never told anyone. By the end of the week, his inbox changed. Detone. Editors apologized. Producers asked for meetings. Podcasts wanted interviews. The same doors that had stayed shut now swung open fast and loud. Money followed, more than he had ever imagined. He did not touch it at first. He sat at the table with the couple, papers spread out, explaining everything slowly, making sure they understood every line. The woman smiled and said she trusted him. The man nodded, eyes steady, finally resting. They did not move into a mansion. They chose calm, a small home, warm light, a garden. The writer's daughter began calling them Grandma and Grandpa, without being told it stuck. When the adopted children reached out, their messages sounded careful, rehearsed, concern mixed with opportunity. The couple read them once and put the phone down. They did not respond. The public did the rest. Names surfaced. The notes circulated. Friends pulled away. Businesses lost clients. Invitations stopped. Silence replaced influence. The couple never spoke publicly about revenge. They did not need to. They had survived something meant to erase them and built a life that did not include the people who tried. On Christmas morning, snow fell softly outside their window. The woman set plates on the table. The man adjusted a crooked photo frame. Laughter filled the room, uneven but real. They were not saved by blood. They were saved by choice. If this story stayed with you, don't let it end here. Some people survive betrayal. Others learn how to choose better bonds afterward. Stay close to stories that remind you who deserves a place in your life. Subscribe for more real stories of resilience, justice, and quiet transformation.